I come from a small town in the innards of Minas Gerais, Brazil. It's not completely remote, but it's pretty small. The only reason this entire city wasn't abandoned when the gold in the mine down there ended is because of our century-old federal university, where losers from the entire country come to study. No, I don't hate or despise them. But let's face the facts. If the only public place that you were able to be approved to study was here, you screwed up pretty badly somewhere along the way. You're probably wondering why I wasted my time writing this, and thinking that it's about rambling about my hometown. No, it is not. Not about my hometown, but about what happens in this cursed land. Sit back. I'll explain everything. I come from one of the oldest families in the region. We were one of the founding families who settled here in the 1600s. I know this started a long time ago. The Standing Ones phenomenon. I found an old diary entry from one of my ancestors, dated 1877, which talked about it, and he seemed about as oblivious about what causes it as I am. Most of my knowledge about the Standing Ones comes from either personal experience, reading in the records of my ancestors, or through what my parents and grandparents have told me. It always starts when you are 9 years old, or if you are adopted into the family, if you start dating or marry a member of my family, and more rarely, if you become a friend of a member of the family. The last cases of dating and friendship causing the phenomenon are not guaranteed to happen. It only happens if you have a real emotional connection to someone in the family. Arranged marriages are unlikely to cause the phenomenon, and fake friends are unlikely to suffer it as well. There have been cases of maids or employees suffering from it, but those are very rare. There are several types of standing ones, but all of them have some common characteristics. The first and most important of them is that they don't move their body. When you look at a standing one, in most cases, you feel like you're looking at a picture. There are types who are able to move their limbs and talk, but those are rare. The second thing is that you really don't want to get close to one or stare too much. This is dangerous and in some cases, fatal. Third, the standing ones are always looking at you. It doesn't matter how far you are, they will be looking at you. The fourth common characteristic is that they 80% of the time do not appear inside your house, but anywhere else is fair game. Even your garden or your workplace, and in almost all of the cases, only you and members of your family are able to even see them. 5. In a usual week, 2 or 3 will appear. There are rare weeks when you only see 1 or none at all, but there are also bad weeks where you'll be seeing at least 1 or 2 per day. My father told me that there is a day that he saw 4, but the most I ever saw was 3. Finally, the 6th thing is that when they show up, they stay for 6 to 12 hours on the place where they appeared, and then they vanish. Usually, at least. I have seen a few throughout the years that broke this pattern, but it's not so common. There's one that stood there for 5 entire days before vanishing. There are several types of standing ones. According to what my grandfather told me, originally there was only one type, but for every 50 or 60 years, a new type appears. This is not always the case. My parents told me 2 new types appeared in their lifetime. Each type is deadlier and deadlier. I am turning 39 years old this year. I have yet to see the new type of the 21st century, and I hope it takes long before it manifests. Now, you must be wondering, what happens if I do stumble upon a standing one? Well, it depends. First and foremost, the consequences of having physical contact or even coming too close to a standing one are usually unpredictable. The older types usually are more of a psychological threat and follow very rigid rules in their behavior. But the newer ones tend to be deadlier and sometimes violate their own patterns. I can't tell the exact consequence of approaching each standing one type, but I can say that if I could tell only a single thing about them, it would be to avoid them at all costs. Their presence is never positive. The best cases are when you stumble upon one of them and nothing happens. In the worst cases, you or someone you love could experience a slow and extremely painful death. Once, I accidentally came into contact of a type 3 standing one and nearly lost my left hand. This is not hyperbolic, I only have 3 fingers in it now, and I consider myself lucky at that. I lost my grandmother, my uncle, my father, and 2 of my cousins to standing ones. The first type, and what the oral tradition of my family claim it's the oldest, are nicknamed azulados. In English, this means the blues. This type usually only appears after midnight and disappears after the sun rises. They look like normal people, but they are completely blue and their faces never demonstrate any emotions whatsoever. They usually wear bland clothing, but sometimes appear naked or wearing extremely outdated fashions. The azulados tend to manifest in empty fields or large, mostly empty rooms, from a distance that you can see them, but they are still far enough from you. They avoid large crowds. If a crowd of people moves next to their location, they will disappear. The azulados are the easiest standing ones to deal with. They rarely appear too close to you and are easy to spot. However, like all standing ones, they're still dangerous. According to my ancestor's diary, one of his relatives once drank too much and tried to confront one of them. The experience made her go insane, and she was sent to a nunnery. The second type of standing one is the arvoredo, which in English means something like tree. This type is easy to avoid nowadays. For a distraught eye, they look exactly like trees, except for a very small difference. They have human faces in their trunks. Usually, they hide in the woods and appear both in the sunlight or in the dark, even if they're way more successful in the dark. Their threat is more psychological, but I assume in the olden days, when the city was completely rural, if it could even be called a city at that time, they were a major threat. They sometimes appear in the middle of houses or streets, but this makes them easy to avoid. The third type first manifested circa 1865, according to my ancestor's diary. This one was nicknamed gravata, which means necktie. Gravatas usually appear in the middle of large crowds. They look like a common individual wearing formal clothing, but they have no eyes or noses, only oversized, smiling mouths. Gravatas are especially dangerous because they are hard to notice. Luckily, they only appear in large crowds. There's no record whatsoever of gravatas manifesting in other places, and the time they are present tends to be shorter than the others, usually only for 3 to 4 hours, or until the crowd disperses. If you accidentally touch a gravata, let's just say you don't want to touch a gravata. My missing 2 fingers explain this better than words. The fourth standing one type are the batedores, or knockers. These are freaking insufferable. They are the most likely to break the standing one's usual stereotypes. First, they usually stay there from 12 to 6 hours, which is double the normal time of the other standing ones. They appear behind doors, windows, sometimes even walls, and will knock non-stop for hours. There's also a slim chance they appear inside your house, but I only saw it happen a handful of times, and never inside my bedroom. They never say anything, they just keep knocking. And they can move their arms, but only knock. Their appearance is equal to that of the azulados, but they almost always wear suits and formal attires, and are always grinning. If you try to call the police or something, they will disappear, wait until you're alone again, and restart. Now, whatever you do, don't open your door or window or whatever the batador is knocking. My 10-year-old cousin opened his window and there was a batador outside. And it was who I discovered. And it was I who discovered him. My cousin's body, I mean. It was surely not a pleasant death. The fifth standing one type are the escondidos, or the hiding ones in English. They always appear hiding somewhere, inside cabinets, your car trunk, fridges, chests, baggages, anywhere they can hide. They have an outstanding ability to contort themselves into completely inhuman positions in order to fit in practically anything larger than a school bag. And they look sickly pale. They're short, faceless humanoid things. They appear for the normal amount of time, and this type has never appeared inside the house of anyone afflicted by the standing ones phenomenon as far as I know. If you open something and find an escondido there, close that thing as fast as you can and don't open that again for at least a day. If you touch one accidentally, well, they're not usually physical threats, but they will destroy your mind in a matter of seconds. I speak from experience. I once accidentally touched one when there was one in my car's trunk and spent nearly an entire semester in a psychiatric hospital. The sixth standing one type are the observadores, or watchers. They always appear outside windows, but differently from the batedores. They do not knock. They just stare. I know, pretty easy to avoid, right? Not actually. When they appear outside every single one of your windows. If you look at another window, they will be there, but not more than one at the same time. This type looks like a rotting corpse, but their eyes are bright yellow and their faces have emotionless expressions, when they still have enough skin to have those anyway. They will always be on the opposite side of the window you are looking at. It's almost impossible to bump into one unless you're actually stupid enough to open your window, but staring at them for too long is dangerous. It kind of makes you sick. I don't know how to explain it properly, but you will start getting nausea, headaches, diarrhea, and other nasty symptoms, and if you don't stop staring for more than 5 minutes, wounds will start appearing in your body. The seventh standing one is the papagayo, or parrot. They look like common people, but are much taller, having an average height of 3 meters, and their skin glows greenly in the dark. Papagayos are very rare. Some of my relatives have never seen one. However, they can appear inside your house, even inside your bedroom, and can stick around for the longest time, normally 48 hours. Papagayos are one of the most dangerous. They are able to imitate voices and sounds, and they use this to lure people towards them. If you come too close, that thing will catch you, and you will probably not survive. Luckily, from what I have observed, they can only do this when they successfully trick you, so they will probably not harm you if they appear by your side when you're asleep. But don't take this for granted. Standing ones sometimes, even if very, very rarely, break their own rules. The eighth standing one is the umbrella guy. This was the first standing one I ever saw as a kid. They look like an ordinary guy carrying an umbrella. It took some time for my family to realize this was actually the eighth type, because their time is the shortest, only 1 minute at maximum. They appear in the middle of the road when you're driving or in a car with someone else. Regardless of how close you are to that person, it could even be a taxi, bus, or Uber driver who you never talked to or saw before. They will see the umbrella guy. If you are going at high speed, there's a chance the driver will try to avoid the umbrella guy and will crash, potentially injuring or killing you. If they run over the umbrella guy, something bad will happen almost instantly after. Probably a very gruesome car crash, an armed robbery, a rock or tree will fall on the vehicle. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you will be harmed, even if only financially. The only way to escape from this one unscathed is to either avoid them without crashing the vehicle, which is difficult as they like to appear when your vehicle is on high speeds, stop until he disappears, or take a U-turn and go back. The ninth type is called sombra, or shadow. The standing one tends to appear in lit ambiances, or during the day. They stick around for the usual time, 6 to 12 hours, and don't look like anything at all. That's because the sombras are invisible. The only way you can know a sombra is there is because they have a very large shadow. In the case they appear in the dark, or you turn off the lights, you will be able to see their true form. Let's just say it makes Type 6 look like Miss Universo. Even if they are easier to avoid in the dark, I prefer the risk stumbling upon them to seeing them in their true form. And of course, if you stumble upon them, it will not be a pleasant experience, as my uncle would tell you if he was still alive. Speaking of my uncle, there's the 10th and last type of standing one, the doppelganger. There's one just by the side of my bed right now. They are the worst type, in my opinion. Doppelgangers usually steal the forms of someone you know, like family members, friends, school or work colleagues, in some cases, even celebrities. Oh, and not necessarily living people. The one by my side is pretty stupid because my uncle has been dead for years. They stay there for the usual amount of time and will not harm you unless you touch them. However, like the papagayos, they can and will appear inside your house and bedroom, but rarely. Not as rarely as the papagayos, though. Well, I don't have many family members left. Most died, either by the work of the standing ones or because they got tired of this horrendous life we have. I have chosen to not have many friends, family, and lovers, and I live by myself with what fortune remains of my family. I imagine in the early days of the phenomenon, things were easier, but nowadays, you can't even go outside without worrying about trees, shadows, crowds, and bags. I suspect this is some curse to make my family go extinct or something, and it gets deadlier and deadlier with time to make sure it works. Anyways, thanks for listening to my story. I could call you a real friend of mine since you were one of the only people I could talk to nowadays. Stay safe. Hi everyone, it's me, Michelle Renee, but you're welcome to call me Giggles. Thank you so much for watching the video. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to my patrons, Eric Cifuentes, Andrea Sanderson London, Lawrence Wallen, Geek Sanctuary, and Melissa Perez. If you want to become a patron today, I have links in the description, also for my Discord or even for my coffee if you just want to make a one-time donation. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you in the next video.